On to section 2. Now, on this one, we're going to have the same standards. The objectives for this time is examine Central America and the Caribbean, discuss the history of this region, and analyze the culture of historic and modern day Central America and the Caribbean. So, Central America forms an isthmus, which is a land bridge between North and South America. And so that's kind of a geography term there. It forms a land bridge between North and South America, is what Central America is. It also divides the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans, which has cause for conflict. But in 1903, when the United States wanted to create the Panama Canal, it connected the two oceans. It was owned by Colombia at the time, and the United States encouraged a revolution in Panama, allowing it to win independence. But when it did, the Panama Canal was built. So there's a little bit of issue there in terms of connecting the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean. And so the United States encouraged a rebellion in Panama, a revolution, in order to overthrow the government and allow us to come in and create the Panama Canal. And just a couple of things. The first one is cultural hearth, which we've had before. It's a place that important ideas are spread. So an idea of a cultural hearth is where people meet up to spread ideas. These are usually trade routes. We call it a water cooler. People go and sit around and, talk. Today, a lot of it's TV. People hang around, you and your friends get together. They sit around and watch TV, maybe play cards or play a game or something like that. And you talk about different stuff, things going on in the world, the election, ideas, your beliefs about stuff, different things like that. And it's places where important ideas are spread. Central America is a cultural hearth because of the variety of people that's there. The Mayan people were some of the first people in Central America, and they built a great empire. And this is a map here of the Central American countries. You can see some of it over there because of the video, but you can kind of get an idea about how this is set up. The Maya built many cities with large temples and palaces in present-day Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. The pyramids of Tikal were among the tallest structures in America until the 20th century. And considering it's made by ancient people, that's a pretty important feat. That these ancient people were able to create these huge temples. The Mayan culture was taken to other places through trade and alliances. And this is here. Look how big this is. You have these people. That's a person. These are people standing on top of it. These huge temples that are humongous, where they would go and perform their rituals and things like that. The Spanish conquest of the Aztecs in Mexico opened the door for the Spanish in Central America. And so the United Provinces of Central America is the name of the unified Central America. The region broke from Mexico in 1823, forming the United Provinces of Central America. By the 1830s, the United Provinces had split into separate nations. These nations were El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Honduras. Later, Panama broke from Colombia, and Belize broke away from British Honduras. And so you kind of see how these different countries formed here in Central America. The original part of Mexico, they formed the United Provinces of Central America. They split off into these 5 original nations, and then they broke off even more with their Colombia breaking off, or Panama breaking off from Colombia, and Belize from the British Honduras. Although Central America was mainly settled by the Spanish, the Caribbean was settled by a number of different powers. Africans that were brought to the Caribbean as slaves would also influence the development of the Western Hemisphere. This will last until the age of exploration in North America as well. And of course, we know of the African slave trade. It was a terrible part of world history where African prisoners of war would be sold from other tribes to the British or to the Spanish or to the Portuguese, who would then send them a lot of times to their colonies. And this was done especially by the British, who would have colonies in the Caribbean, but also from the other countries as well. And then they would also use that to send them other places like North America. And so here shows the Caribbean. And of course, there's all kinds of islands in the Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago at the bottom down here, all the way up through Grenada, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, the Bahamas, the U.S. Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Barbados. So there's all kinds of islands in the Caribbean. When Christopher Columbus reached the Caribbean and islands in 1492, he thought he had reached the East Indies, so he called the people Indians. That's what is believed. The people there were actually called the Taino people, which is what the natives of the Caribbean were named, and they tried to use them as slaves, but they couldn't hold up to the intense labor requirements. So they started using African slaves as well, which was around the same area in terms of latitude and longitude lines, and so a lot of the same climate and things like that were similar. And so this is going to allow for them to start bringing in African slaves because the native people can't hold up to the work that they're being required to do and the climate and all that stuff. By the 19th century, the Spanish, French, British, Dutch, and Danish claimed islands in the Caribbean. Most were trying to profit from the sugar trade, and they relied on forced labor from Africa or slaves. The first independence movement in Latin America occurred in the slave revolt in Haiti, and this is going to play a big factor not just in the Caribbean but also in North America and the United States. In the 1790s, Toussaint Louverture led a rebellion in Haiti and took over the government of the island. He was a slave that led a slave revolt that took over the Haitian government, and the French were never able to get the Haitian government back under their control again. It's going to lead to the Louisiana Purchase, which we've mentioned a number of times, because Napoleon says, basically, we have no reason to have this area if we don't have Haiti, because Haiti they were growing things and making things in the Louisiana territory that they were sending to Haiti to help out with the slave trade and things that were growing there. Well, when you lose Haiti, you really have no point in having Louisiana anymore, or the Louisiana territory, and so that's when they sold it to the United States. Many of the islands, including Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, all gained independence throughout the course of their history. Native American cultures blend together in Central America with the Spanish. This is the reason why Catholicism is the major religion in Central America, because a lot of the Spanish and Portuguese settlers were Catholic. The way of life was altered by the region by the Spanish when they came in and cut down trees and started creating towns. A great variety of influence took place in the Caribbean. Along with the powers that claimed the islands, the influence of the African culture was also important as well. Many of the people that live in the Caribbean today are natives or descendants of the Africans brought in by the slave trade. And they're going to bring in their culture and their beliefs and their ideas and things like that as well. The religions of the Caribbean are both Catholic and Protestant. That's the two major religions in the Caribbean. But you also have Voodoo and Rastafari, which are the regions of Haiti and Jamaica, which are also important belief systems in those regions. Spanish is the most populous language in the Caribbean, with English also spoken. And so, of course, the Caribbean is a major tourist destination, so they got to know English because there's a lot of American tourists that go to the Caribbean. Most of the people in the Caribbean are poor, and this can be traced back to colonialism. The people there, a lot of them were just poor people that they didn't really have any kind of influence or power or anything like that. There was a focus on the sugar trade, but it declined with the sugar industry, and the natural resources were shipped out and not left in the region, which hurt it. Sugarcane plantations provide the largest exported crop in the Caribbean. Now, it pays very low for these people that work in these sugar plantations. It's got a history of paying people extremely low amounts. And the Panama Canal that we mentioned earlier cuts through the land bridge to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. And this is going to be important for trade, so people don't have to go all the way down the coast of South America and back up. And it's not a great picture, but this is a picture of the Panama Canal. And you see that this water cuts across all the way, connecting the two oceans where land originally was. Population patterns in Central America are directly related to the economies. In Central America, most people live on farms, and therefore there is a more rural area. Many of the people in the Caribbean live in urban areas and hope to find jobs in tourism. So when we look at this, in Central America, there's a lot of rural areas, there's a lot of farming, there's a lot of people who live on farms, who grow things. But in the Caribbean, most of the people there work in tourism because you have different places like the Bahamas and places like that, that tourism is going to be the major industry. I mean, the whole Caribbean region is known for their tourism. People go there for a number of things. Education and jobs are a large concern to the people of Central America and the Caribbean, and music has heavily influenced this part of the culture. Both reggae and calypso music started in the Caribbean. These are two types of music that started in the Caribbean. Calypso is music that combines elements from multiple countries. It's kind of a blend of a bunch of different cultures. And reggae is music that developed in Jamaica, where calypso focuses mostly on improvised lyrics and is accompanied by steel drums and guitar. Reggae focuses on social problems and religion. So a lot of times in reggae, you'll hear them talking about social injustice. They'll talk about their beliefs. They'll talk about problems going on in the world. Where calypso is more of improvised steel drums and guitar music. Rapid population growth in the Caribbean has contributed to a lack of jobs. There are schools that are set up to teach people how to work in agriculture and tourism because they do not have work skills. Tourism is an increasingly important industry. Again, the major source of income in Central America and the Caribbean is farming and tourism. Many people work in the hotel industry, at tourist destinations, at restaurants. These are informal jobs with no benefits or protection for workers. These aren't the next example are. These are a lot of times it depends on what company you work for, what your benefits and stuff are at some of these tourist destinations. But also, much of the tourism industry is informal. They don't have benefits. They don't have any protection for workers. There's no labor unions or nothing like that. These include shoe shining stations, street vendors, other jobs and services that provide a small income. These are going to be little people on the streets doing, you go through there and they're like, 2 shirts for $15, and they're selling T-shirts. They're selling little shell things, things that are made out of shells that you can buy. A lot of your knickknacks, your souvenirs that you buy, people are going to be bought from some of these informal economic people. And this just shows you a picture here. This is a guy doing shoe shining. And so he just has this set up where he does it, and he depends on the money people pay him. There's not a guarantee about this. I'm sure that people like this was very hurt when COVID hit because they weren't protected with their jobs. And that brings us to the end of Section 2, where we examine Central America and the Caribbean. We discussed the history of the region with the Mayan Empire, and analyze the culture and historic and modern-day Central America and the Caribbean. And we did this as well with the economy and the things that are important there today, such as farming and tourism and stuff like that. So we'll pick back up with Section 3.